Barring a few minor successes, last year for me was mainly a year of stagnation. I should say not in the hygiene sense. No, I smelled and continue to smell fine, thank you very much. I was stuck in an old apartment that I sort of barely tolerated through the damp and the dust and the occasional little crawly bug. Nothing was really going on for me personally either. My many board game design projects had stalled, and my motivation to get them either playtested, promoted, or published had drained away. And it's already hard enough for me to share anything I do with a bigger audience anyway. Just take a look at the date of my last upload. That said, I did still manage to get the Cultic video done, a project I'd wanted to complete ever since the game came out 2.5 years ago. So it's late, but that was at least one personal success for me last year. And then I got an eviction notice in October, topping off the year in truly phenomenal style. So not an amazing year for youtube.com/themissingv, and not an amazing year for me to attempt what ended up not really being much of a comeback. But why am I telling you all of this? Why should you care? What relevance does my personal life have to a gaming channel? Well, during this multiple month-long rut, I ended up falling into some very dry coping mechanisms. I didn't have the energy or motivation to commit to what I'd call intentional gaming, where you open up a game on your main screen, sit back in the computer chair and just dig into it for hours, immersing yourself in either a big single-player world or the dopamine dice roll of an online multiplayer game. I'd bought Cyberpunk midway through the year and was really looking forward to finally playing what was now a functional or perhaps playable game. That is, until I booted it up a couple of times and I just couldn't carry on with it. I played the first couple of missions, then just drifted away, not really wanting to open it up and get stuck in again. And it wasn't like I was having a bad time either. I just did not have the energy to sit at the computer chair after a day of work playing an involving, long single-player game. What I was doing instead was choosing games that could be played easily on a single monitor, so I could have YouTube or Twitch open on the second one to click through. I was just killing time after finishing work, using as little mental ability as possible because I was just too fed up and too demotivated to bother focusing on one substantial thing, even if that one thing is a video game, which should be entertaining. And though this confession is a little embarrassing, nothing could be more embarrassing than revealing the game that I spent the most time on, the game that stormed its way to the top of my most played for 2024, branded to my Steam year in review like a scarlet letter of shame. Marvel Snap. A quick author's note before we begin. While I was making this video, the Marvel Snap dev team announced that they were changing the very card acquisition system that I go on to discuss here later. This video is intended to talk more about my personal experiences, rather than thoroughly critique an outdated mechanic now, but I thought it would be appropriate to put this little note here regardless. Never making a video about a live service game ever again. Marvel Snap is a digital card game based on, well, I don't think I need to tell you that, right? Players build 12 card decks based on their favourite superheroes, pitting their colourful caped collectibles against their opponents. Unlike many digital card games, Marvel Snap isn't a Magic or Hearthstone clone, and has more in common with my personal paramour, Gwent. You don't attack your opponent, or most of the time you don't even attack their cards. Instead, your heroes hit the board and generate power, contributing their points to a location. The player that has the most power at 2 out of 3 locations at the end of the game wins. This is the game's basic backbone, but the real meat is found in the eponymous snap mechanic. Essentially, it's like raising in poker. A player confident in their hand and game state can snap, doubling their winnings at the end of the game. If both players snap, winnings are doubled again, with the winning player gaining 8 cubes and the loser, well, losing 8 cubes. A cynic, or realist, might say that snapping is where the true gameplay lies, with the pretty animations and recognizable characters merely window dressing, and I think it's a bit hard to argue with that. I'm not much of a gambler. In fact, I'm not a gambler at all. I've bet bits and pieces over the years, but I just don't feel the same thrill from it that other people do, and I need that guaranteed return on investment for fun. Even though saying the phrase return on investment feels like it rotted my soul out there. If I win big in Marvel Snap, gaining either 8 cubes or 4, I might get a bit of a rush, but it's more relief than celebration. It's not a buzz or a high, and I'm just happy to have gotten through the match alive. If I lose, it doesn't incentivize me to snap more and chase losses as I imagine they want you to feel. I just feel really, really bad, and I kind of just don't want to risk anymore or even play anymore sometimes. So I'm definitely not the kind of player that should be playing a game like this, right? I think that's pretty clear, and by now you're probably all baffled that I put any time into the game at all. Well, though the gambling aspect of the game isn't really for me, I did get something out of the actual gameplay. I enjoy your standard TCG, playing monsters, turning them sideways, dealing damage to the opponent, but there's also something to be said for card games where you just slam your guys down and make the numbers go up. This is a lot of the reason I enjoyed Gwent so much. It's fun to build a nice big army of dudes that combine together to increase your board presence, without them having to do anything besides sit there and look pretty, and I guess occasionally develop value over time. And since Gwent went into maintenance mode, I've been starved for that sort of game really. Granted, I could still play Gwent, and I do still play Gwent occasionally, but with the amount of hours I piled into that game, I just sort of wanted to try the new kid on the block. Plus, it's rewarding playing a fresh game with a bit of a progression system, right? Something to work for while you enjoy playing, some goals and rewards to enhance your overall free-to-play experience. We'll get back to that optimistic prospect later. The fact is, I liked building decks and playing cards. The effects of each card also look really good when they land on the board, with characters flying or smashing into action when you play them or when they reveal. Even though the effects themselves don't always line up thematically with the characters they're attached to, the animations can help you feel like you're actually enlisting, for example, Jubilee into your team. The game also has a lot of archetypes, whether they're classic archetypes like hand discard or mid-range that you see in almost every card game out there, or archetypes like Ultron or Galactus that work best with Marvel Snap's specific mechanics. So I was easily able to find a few that I enjoyed. The aforementioned discard is one of my favourites, and the feeling of burning your entire hand away with Modok and levelling up your Apocalypse a bunch of times is a really satisfactory one. As a Doctor Doom enjoyer, I also love one of the more recent archetypes, where you play a future Doom who keeps spawning drones to your field that boost each other and your other Dooms. So I was able to kind of selectively engage with the snapping mechanic, making use of it when I really needed to, but generally not really playing the game properly and ignoring it if I had the opportunity. In the meantime, I just had fun slamming my cards and experimenting with different decks and builds. But just building 1 or 2 decks isn't always enough. Any of my fellow trading card gamers will understand the urge to plow your entire bank account into singles for a load of different decks, sometimes in a load of different games too if your impulse control is as unchecked as mine can be. As a result, you start to want to acquire new cards and build new decks, maybe some that you've seen on the ladder, maybe some that you've seen on YouTube. Maybe some that you just like the look of and fancy putting together. New cards are released on a weekly basis in Marvel Snap, so there's always some fresh deck building material coming out to freshen your game up. If only it were that easy. It's hard to talk about how I kind of got hooked on Marvel Snap without talking about the progression system. In order to unlock new cards, cosmetics, and very, very occasionally in-game currency, players upgrade their collection level, spending credits and boosters to upgrade their cards and progressing a few steps along the collection track. When you're starting out, every few levels or so you'll get a new card. This feels pretty good when you're getting into the game, giving you a clear target to aim for and something to work towards while having fun at the same time. After a certain point though, the game stops giving you cards here and forces you to look elsewhere, either in the shop, where a rotating selection of cards can be purchased for a ludicrous amount of collector tokens, by buying the monthly season pass for a card that can't be acquired any other way, or by entrusting yourself to the capricious whims of the Spotlight cache. And here's where we get to the reason this game was 35% of my overall playtime last year. That is painful to say. Whenever a new card is released, it goes into one of 4 Spotlight caches, just to the side of your collection ladder. These caches only stick around for a week, and to open them you need to use a Spotlight key, earned after reaching just over 100 ranks on said ladder. When you use a Spotlight key, you acquire one of 4 cards at random, maybe the new card, maybe one of 2 older cards, or maybe one random card that you may or may not have already. You can take a gamble using 1 or 2 keys, but if you roll badly, you might be left disappointed. Because you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting the card you want, it's best to save up all 4 Spotlight keys if there's a card you really want in the current week's cache. Alternatively, you can buy the new card from the shop at a whopping 6,000 collector's tokens, a feat I've managed I think 3 times in my 400 plus hours playing the game, and an option that I just never take into consideration because the game just doesn't give you enough tokens most of the time. I'm not a whale, that is to say I don't spend huge amounts of money on digital games, both because I don't have it to spare really, and because I don't see the value in it. I'll make the occasional purchase of course, but you have to be aware that all of this is ephemeral and can go up in smoke as soon as the publisher, or indeed the US government, decides you're no longer allowed to have access to it. There are many people who really have an issue with constant spending, either impulsive or otherwise, and most live service games exist to prey upon this vulnerability. Thankfully, as of yet, no game has monopolized my spending in such an all-encompassing way. However, though I wasn't always spending lots of money, I did get hooked on Marvel Snap's progression. This was my main card game. I tried others, but none of them had the appeal of basically being a modern Gwent-like that was still being updated by developers. I was enjoying the game, but I wanted to access all of the new cards that were being released. This of course means opening Spotlight caches, which means ranking up my cards and climbing the ladder to gain Spotlight keys. To rank up my cards, I need credits, which means logging in every day and plugging away at daily mission after weekly mission, climbing the ladder so I get the credit bonus for reaching a certain rank, maybe spending some gold on credits so I can push closer to another key. Also, I can save up 4 of them to guarantee myself one card I'm interested in out of the 4 Spotlight caches in the month. I started playing Marvel Snap in May, and after a few months this got really old. I was logging in even when I didn't want to play the game, forcing myself to spend time grinding out the goals because if I didn't, I might not earn those keys in time and I'd fall behind on opening caches. If there were 2 cards I wanted that month, I'd especially have to keep on it. What if I missed out and didn't open them? Then I'd have to wait so long for them to turn up in another cache, or in the aforementioned unreliable shop. The only option, if I wanted to keep having fun, was to keep plugging away at the game, even when it felt like a total grind. I bought a couple of the season passes when there was a card attached that I liked, and these give you plenty of resources, but I often found myself totally burning out about halfway through the season. I was tired of feeling obliged to play this game anyway, let alone because I'm getting sunk cost fallacy from having already spent money on the pass. Sometimes this would let up towards the end of the season, I'd start actually enjoying the game again, and if the next month's card looked fun, hey, I'd pick up the pass again. And so the cycle continued, with me logging in each day, grinding the dailies, occasionally having fun, carefully planning which Spotlight caches to open in order to maximize my resources, and vaguely keeping up with the game. Even though I barely actually earned any new cards to play with, and couldn't keep up with the tip-top of the meta practically ever. This continued for months, in which time I'd barely play anything else. I'd finish work, Then it was time for more Snap dailies, usually with something to watch on the second screen, just like how I'd been working. With my day job over, the evening job of not falling behind in Snap began. I wasn't even slightly nearing a full collection or making any substantial progress in catching up with the vast backlog of cards already in the game. My daily labours were simply to keep up with what little progress I had so that I could still occasionally enjoy the game I was spending most of the year playing. When December rolled around, however, I really was fed up. I bought November's Season Pass card, Surta, who enables a really fun archetype where you just slam your biggest point cards onto the board, as little brainpower required as possible and immediately rewarding. However, I'd even burned out, no pun intended, on this archetype by the end of the month. And while I was tempted by the extremely generic and powerful Galacta, I realised I was having way too little fun playing to commit to yet another Season Pass. I tried to play the month out, having seen leaks that Doom 2099 was one of the upcoming cards, but found myself having less and less fun. The game completely dried up for me, and it was during this month that I moved out to my new apartment, throwing up a load of extra stress and work that I couldn't spend playing. When Doom released, I opened up Spotlight Caches, getting him in 2, and built a deck around him. I played a few games, slamming Doom down and spawning little robots, but I just didn't feel anything anymore. The excitement that I'd felt when Surta or Scorn released had dissipated, and even playing a deck based around my favourite Marvel character couldn't get me back into the game. The grinding, the gambling, the constant nagging at my consciousness that I'd have more fun if I just bought the Season Pass, if I got gold and credits to upgrade cards, to earn tokens or keys to earn more cards and decks. All this had just become too much for me to bear, and now I wasn't even having the remotest bit of fun. I hope you're all aware it's pretty embarrassing to admit all of this. I used to take pride in being able to limit my spending and not being taken in by gambling or gacha schemes, but this game had been able to keep me playing against my better judgment all the same. While I didn't spend an extortionate amount of money, I feel like I put in way too much time, which is a similarly precious resource. When people brought it up or mentioned that they'd seen me playing it, I felt embarrassed. So much time put into a game I only liked about half the time, if that. I was already stuck in a rut, and I'd fallen into an even deeper one. It all ended in January. I'd been saving up Spotlight Caches for Victoria Hand, a card who buffed what is essentially Marvel Snap's Discover mechanic from Hearthstone, where you create cards out of nowhere and add them to your hand. I didn't plan on getting the Season Pass card, who was touted by YouTubers as being pivotal for this archetype, and I just thought I'd make my deck work without it. I had 3 keys left over when Hand entered the Spotlight Caches, and I just thought I'll spend them. Screw it. That's a 75% chance of getting the card right. I'll just use my leftover keys, and I didn't get her. I got everything else, including a variant for a Season Pass card that I'd bought months ago and no longer played any decks for. All I could do was laugh and say to myself, well, that's it then. The choice had been made. I closed the game and uninstalled 6 months of my non-paying side job removed from my PC. It's only been a month since I stopped playing, a couple of months since I really stopped putting time in, and I've had no desire to go back and try again. The time investment and minimal rewards for said investment just aren't enough for me, even if the designs of the cards still look alluring and fun. Even now, I look through the caches and I see cards that look cool. Ares? Oh, he gains value the more big cards you play, so he'd go great with Surta. It gets me excited and wanting to play again until I realise that if I wanted to unlock him, I'd have to put on my hard hat, grab my pickaxe, and get ready for a long stint in the Marvel Snap mines. After I stopped playing, it immediately felt like some sort of burden had been lifted, much like the feeling you get after you finish a big project or a day of work. That definitely told me that I'd done the right thing in giving the game up. I thought back over all the time I'd spent playing Snap when I could have been, writing or designing or working on videos much like this one. What's more, I could have been using my gaming time to play something that actually felt rewarding to play. Rewarding for its own sake rather than for the prospect of new cards or other unlockables. So I thought long and hard to myself, what game could I play that would possibly fulfill all of these conditions?